Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast, and welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Am I peering into a reality, or is one peering at me? Okay, so something happened to me recently that just absolutely blew my mind. I woke up the other day and saw what I can best describe as an emanating geometric fractal. It was shaped like a circle, and most of the inner part was this constantly changing pattern of geometric shapes and overlapping lattices of them. Towards the edge of the circle were these branches that just seemed to be infinite as a fractal would be. The lines themselves were blacker than black, like MITZU black. It lingered for a few seconds at most, before fading away. Now I am no stranger to hallucinating some wild shit due to sleep paralysis. I have had sleep paralysis for about 10 years. I mention this because I feel it's relevant to note that this felt nothing like it, both mentally and physically. So I simply can't write this off as some sleep paralysis shit. I felt zero fear, zero body sensation, and was only just in awe. It felt as though I was peering into another dimension, or something was visiting me. This actually isn't the first time I've had an experience like this either. Once years ago, I awoke to seeing a basketball-sized orb pitch black with tendrils, like a black sun. I only woke up because my girlfriend was screaming in fear and moving away from what I saw. Anyway, I'm curious what others think about this, or if you've had any experience like mine. Oh, last thing, I've been doing Sober October, so that could be a factor. Pick semi-related.
Pretty sure the major story here is the one of the pitch-black orb with tendrils both you and your girlfriend saw. Maybe elaborate on that first.
Well, I've already gotten insight about this before, so that's why it wasn't the main story. But all right. Woke up in the middle of the night to the sound of my girlfriend screaming. I saw above me the orb I described. I felt mild sleep paralysis body symptoms, and I wasn't too fazed by what I saw, because like I said, I've seen a bunch of crazy shit. Also, my attention was to my girlfriend. She was literally frantically crawling backwards and hysterical. I calmed her down and we went back to sleep. It wasn't until the next day I actually asked her what she saw, at which point she described what I saw. The experience boggled my mind for years because it was a shared experience. But recently someone told me it could have been an egregore, which is just an autonomous consciousness made out of an ideal or several. Someone else told me it could have been an angel as they are depicted in the Bible.
So, you were literally visited by the beyond in an unmistakable fashion, and you simply accepted that it may have been a thought form or angel, and you don't see a connection between that experience and your current one. Come on, Anon. Something very real is visiting you. Maybe start asking yourself why.
I've wanted to believe that could be the case, but then I thought, who am I? Why should I consider myself so important that extra-dimensional beings would show themselves to me? It would be dangerous thinking, a delusion of grandeur even. After this second experience, I can't simply accept this as something so insignificant as a thought form, though. There is a story I have about my childhood and my mother, who is sensitive. Would you care to hear it?
I always seen the orbs as autonomous, and it seems as though the one that came to you was as well. Tell your story.
Okay, bear with me. This is somewhat lengthy cause. It's almost like my origin story. When I was born, I had my umbilical cord wrapped around my neck and leg, so I lost oxygen at birth. 2 weeks later, I caught pneumonia. I was a very chill baby. Hardly cried, fussed, slept through the whole night. I could be held by anyone, and I could sit and be content anywhere. But my mom told me she was worried about me. Something wasn't right. And she was right. I started having directional problems, telling left from right or behind, etc. And I was just so quiet, it was like I wasn't there, like I was subdued. She had me tested, and the doctors told her I was borderline autistic, but she refused to believe that. Instead, she just kept trying to nurture me. A little backstory on my mom. Like I said, she's sensitive, but she used to practice a form of Wicca and has seen some wild shit herself, like actually seeing spirits and demonic type shit, all that. Anyway, fast forward. One day when I was about 2 or so, my family went to the mall. When we arrived, there was this big psychic convention going on. So my mom was like, cool, let's go to Sears first and see this psychic stuff after. So we finished our business, which was on like the second floor of the mall. As we're walking to go downstairs, we passed by this place that looked like an arcade of sorts. There was a man there, and he was beckoning us to come inside. My mom asks, "Are you a part of the convention?" He replies cheerily, "Yes, I am. Please come inside. I'd like to talk to you. Your kids can go play the games while we talk." So my mom mentions to him that he looks very familiar and asks if she knows him. And he tells her that she does, but in such a way that suggests she would remember seeing him before, which she did. Long story short, she has seen him before in her parents' house. He's her spirit guide. Anyway, he starts talking about each of her children with her. He mentions my older sister first, saying she is strong and resilient and will do well. My younger brother was next, whom my mother was worried about because he was always doing dumb shit that could be dangerous. He told her, "Don't worry, he'll be fine. But your oldest son, he is in trouble." Of course, my mom had her suspicions, but this validated what she believed, that what was happening to me was not something biological or psychological. It was something external. First of all, he starts saying stuff to her about me he couldn't possibly know, like about my loss of oxygen at birth. He said at this moment of me coming into the world as a conscious being, I was vulnerable because of the loss of oxygen and trauma. So these sort of energetic leeches attached themselves to me, feeding off of that experience and trying to take a hold of me. He then had my mom call me over, saying he could help me. And so he removed those energies from me. So my mom thanks him and we leave. We walk around some more, but end up circling back to the place where he was. However, when we got back there, he was no longer there. There was no shop, and the place was boarded up as if no one had been there. My mom asked a security guard about where the guy was that was just in that shop, mentioning the psychic convention. The guy looks at her weird and says, "There is no shop here, and the convention is only on the first floor." Needless to say, my mom was like, holy shit, WTF. My sister was even old enough to remember this too, so it happened. Anyway, this was the turning point of my life. The very next day is the first memory I've ever had, and it's still strong to this day. I remember waking up and exiting me in my brother's room, where I saw my mom. I asked her if I could use the markers to color. She took me into her and my dad's room to get them. I then said to her, paraphrasing, "Mom, can I talk to you for a second?" She was already kind of weirded out by a 2-some-odd-year-old asking such a question, but she said, "Yes, of course, honey." I then patted the bed for her to sit down, and although even more weirded out, she did. I then said to her, "Mom, on Kauai and before I was asleep, but I'm awake now." And from then on, it was like I was a totally different person, myself. My mom could barely keep her shit together at that moment and the rest of the day. So in conclusion, I've been aware of divine intervention my whole life. I've always wanted more answers about what happened to me, and it has led me to be highly inquisitive about the nature of all things. I'd like to think I'm special in some way. I'd like to find what my purpose for being is.
Hey folks, thought I'd give this a try. See if anyone has some ideas or theories. First of all, no, not schizo. Have been going and continue to go to a psychiatrist since not long after this began. He seems to think the whole scenario is strange, and that I have some altered thinking but didn't really recommend medication unless my work and life was affected in a detrimental way, or if the stress was getting to be too much. There is so much to say. I have a diary of my experience as this has gone on, but that is probably a bit too much to post on here. I'll try to keep it brief. About 9 months ago, I noticed some strange behavior by my roommate. He was constantly trying to help me make money and just overall be successful in life. He was very interested in getting to know what I want, my aspirations and dreams. What specifically do I want in life? I had no answers, except for a vague idea of doing something positive for the world. I happen to be a very boring and uninspired person. I work as a server and live paycheck to paycheck. He tried to subtly to improve my lifestyle and bad habits, of which I have many. Not outrageous behavior, but strange to me as we were not really friends. The behavior steadily intensified, and I got the sense he was trying to make those changes by cognitive behavioral therapy, rewarding my good behavior and punishing my bad behavior, but in very subtle ways. I noticed lights in the house having different brightness, or how messy the kitchen house was, his behavior, even the dog's behavior and the types of conversations he would have with me. Little things. He had the movie Click on the dining room table for months, the one with Adam Sandler where he can alter time. Then he started buying Lucky Charms all the time. Then some Pokemon movie called The Wishmaker joined the table. Throughout this, I was totally resistant, and if anything obstinate and rebellious. During this time, I noticed some coworkers behaving in a somewhat similar manner, trying to be my friend and particularly nice to me, trying to help me be a better person. I noticed it with some customers as well. Again, I don't think that behavior is outrageous, but it just did not seem genuine. I'm not a particularly social or friendly person. I try to be, but I think it just comes across as awkward most of the time. Then his father from Colombia moved into the house. They converted part of the kitchen into a room, right below my room where I sleep. We happened to have a water leak soon after, and the drywall was destroyed and had to be removed. This was right below my bed. I had a suspicion that this was intentional, as soon after I started having very strange dreams. But that's a whole other bag of worms. I decided to move out in August as things were just getting too weird. I had an instinct that they were fucking with me while I was sleeping and I was worried about my safety. I stayed with my aunt who was house-sitting for a friend for a month. The room she had me stay in was packed full of Jesus imagery. A grandmother from Cuba was the occupant. I sort of calmed down, but was still trying to figure out what and why. I decided to move back in with my roommates after the month as I came to conclusion they were trying to help me, and I could use the help and I didn't find any work where I was. So I moved back and got my job back. The strangeness continued, but I tried to work with it rather than resist. Try to make some improvements in my life. It was somewhat successful, but I just didn't like the idea of not understanding why this was happening to me. Then came September 23rd. Yep, that date. Happens to be my birthday, turning 33. I had just met a girl and we were hanging out for the second time. We chilled, and I started to hear a voice in my head. She was totally fine, just stoned. I was freaking out. I went out to the patio and the voice started narrating my experience. Speaking to be, but also narrating. It said that I was living in a simulated reality and that I could have whatever I wanted. It said I just had to do something. The dialogue was almost humorous as it spoke. He's getting it, yes, just do something. Then I would think negatively like what the fuck is going on, this is bullshit. Followed by, oh no, he's losing it, he doesn't get it. And I'd think more positively and yes, just fucking do something, whatever, anything, just do something. It said the easiest way was to just stay awake for 7 days, but then I can play it out however I want. I happen to have a fetish for dominant women, which I thought about and it said, please no, but if that's what you want. I stayed up all night and the next day at work reality had changed. All of the women I met were slightly taller and more dominant. Women were ordering for their husbands and had a bit more attitude. Men seemed to have had the opposite effect. It was the craziest day in my life. My coworkers and managers who I had known for years had a different demeanor, personality, and even physical appearance. My reality had changed, or my perception of reality had changed. Even work procedures were different. A coworker asking why I was putting 2 tea bags on the plate instead of 1, when it's always been 2. Or why I hadn't stocked the apple compote on the line, when the cooks used to have it in the kitchen. It was fucking crazy. Not only that, but my coworkers and customers were being super flirtatious and looking at me with adoration. Suffice it to say I was blown away, and could barely keep it together when I asked others about what was going on and why things were different. They just gave me a shit-eating grin and denied anything was different, asked if I was okay. I stayed awake for the next couple days, but eventually went to sleep on day 4, I think. At which point things sort of went back to normal. The normal where people are trying to help me and want me to be happy. A few weeks later it happened again, but in a different way. Basically, I was teaching that girl I had met to drive, and some of the things I told her became true. I said something about how wide lanes were and speed limits, which were just guesstimates and inaccurate, and the next day the roads were wider and the speed limits were higher. Then it happened again on Christmas Eve. Similar to the first experience, but in a more gentle way, women were more motherly and men more boyish. I could go into all kinds of details, but this will get too long. I will if some ask. So since the 24th, I've been trying to figure shit out. I've basically refused to cooperate with whatever is going on and act like I'm living a normal life. Even though I seem to have the ability to change reality, or something is changing reality around me to please me, or I'm crazy. I've tried to read all sorts of different shit, the Bible, psychology books, paranormal. I've got nothing. I finally came across this anomaly shit and it got me curious. I'm just a normal guy, so this whole thing makes me really suspicious. I don't see myself as anything special, and I don't want to participate in something unless I know what I'm getting into, so I have tried not to exploit these changes as they have come and gone. If anything, I retreated to solitude to escape the changes, although I must say these experiences have changed me. My instinct is that people think I am something that I am not, or I don't believe myself to be, and are trying to draw it out of me, to wake up, as my roommate has said many times to me. I have a variety of theories, none of which I can verify, and no one will tell me anything, just denial. Maybe some crazy inheritance stipulations, secret royalty, some group thinks I'm a savior. Am I living in fucking North Korea, Lowell Alien Zoo, Truman Show, or maybe the voice on the 23rd that it's a simulated reality? I've basically stood firm and tried to live as normal of a life as I can. Or another way of seeing it is that the idea of all of my previous life of being farce, so to speak, frightens me. So I try to hold on to that reality, rather than accept these alternate realities. Despite this, it continues on a day-to-day basis, as if people are still waiting for me to wake up. I got the message that what I seek seeks me. I'm stubborn as all hell and want to know what I'm getting into before getting to it, but I'm also worried I'm giving up an opportunity. I seems like I could use this for a good purpose, but fuck if I know what would actually be good for this world or for myself for that matter.
Anyone else have paranormal experiences that were diagnosed as a symptom of a mental illness? I've had 2 mental breakdowns, manic episodes that resulted in hospitalization, and I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder the first time. These episodes begin as a slowly increasing occurrence of synchronicities and reality distortions that are mostly visual, sometimes auditory. I'll describe some of these experiences. I've seen my entire surroundings suddenly drop in resolution to where everything looked blocky and digital. I was hanging out with my nephew when the trees around me looked straight out of Minecraft. I had a sudden sense of dread and rushed inside to be near the rest of my family. They surrounded me and their eyes looked massive as if they were possessed by greys or something. My nephew is a diagnosed psychopath and I felt a sudden sense of malevolence from him. He poked his head in the door from outside, and both of his eyes were jet black. The white part, everything, Vanta black. His mouth looked like a Cheshire cat grin, and he had shark's teeth. I completely believe I was pulled into another dimension here where demons or tricksters were pulling some kind of cosmic prank on me. It was fucking nuts. I spent the rest of the night having an intense panic attack with closed eye visuals similar to DMT visuals, an incredibly claustrophobic open-eye tunnel vision that was like peering through a triangular-shaped hole. Another experience I had. It's my second time at the hospital. This time was the result of a panic attack in public after about a month of escalation into a manic episode. I was at a vineyard in this crazy, modern art sculpture garden, and something about the art there felt like it had evil intent built into it. Maybe just my perception. Hard to make sense of any of this stuff, and maybe there's not any point in trying to. I just contemplated all quite a bit, literally pulled my clothes off and was screaming about nonsense in my underwear at this upscale vineyard, in their sculpture garden. That whole day I was having visual distortions where I would see things and vehicles in my rearview mirror that weren't there when I looked away and looked back. So long story short, I get taken to jail instead of the hospital. The cops kept me for a day or two. Hard to say because I had my ass beat pretty bad when they got me to jail. Pulled me out of the car. I was scared to go in and they weren't happy about that. They put a spit mask on me, chained me to a bed and dosed me with some sort of sedative, so a number of hours, days are just missing there. They finally took me to a hospital under a judge's orders, and I'm sitting in this intake room. MTV is on. I say something to the person on the TV. It talks back. Says, "Look at this fool talking to the goddamn TV. They're gonna think you're crazy, homie." And this goes on for a bit where I'm having a dialogue with the damn TV. Sometime later, perception of time totally broken here. There's a deputy sitting outside the room which has a big window. I see his eyes turn jet black. All of his skin on his face and head turns a bright red color, and we're staring each other down. All of a sudden, I hear him communicating with me telepathically. You can learn a lot from me, you know, and I feel totally threatened at this point. It appears that something is inhabiting his body and speaking to me through it. So I'm sitting there staring at this thing, assuming it's a malevolent demon or something. I actually regret that now, and I wish I could have maintained some sort of cool here to try and explore a dialogue with this thing. I'm not breaking eye contact. Eventually, the deputy shakes his head. His skin and eyes return to normal. He looks around like, "Hope nobody saw that," and resumes looking at his newspaper. He looked very startled. In that same room, I'm watching all of the other patient intake rooms with big open windows, and I'm seeing some kind of translucent golden humanoid essence outline of some sort, moving between people in this unit, touching them on various parts of their chest and head. I felt like I was seeing something that's always there but can't typically be seen. These are just a couple stories from some wild rides I've been on mentally. I actually cope really well in my daily life and leverage some of these manic traits. I have to succeed really well in the business I started and maintain. I just feel like these are stories I can't relay to the average person because most of it has no logical coherence and people just kind of smile and nod.
It really makes me wonder what they really know about these manic states and what sort of abilities could be honed by harnessing them properly in the right environments. It all legitimately feels like you're caught between dimensions or something when it's happening to you. And of course, psychiatric medicine is dead set on not legitimizing these experiences because they come at it from a materialist, brain chemicals are dysregulated standpoint. The way the establishment handles things, it seems like the entire process is set up to inflict as much trauma as possible while you're in a suggestible hypnotic state, and to add fuel to that psychological fire by feeding you psychotropic drugs under the guise of helping you.
I'm also diagnosed with bipolar. I've only had 2 manic episodes in my life, both of them being instigated by new SSRI medication, but they are genuinely terrifying. Both of them began by seeing patterns in everything, radio, books, television, etc., and then I would start developing various delusions, one of them being that I was dead. This would lead me to doing absurdly dangerous things like hanging off railings and speeding down city streets. I also convinced myself that I was a vampire and would knock on doors asking people to invite me in. Eventually, I had the police called on me, which led me to assaulting the officer and going to jail in a psych ward. I had to drop out of college and everything. I'm now on a mood stabilizer that works great for me, so I guess that's a plus.
I have bipolar too, and after a manic episode I also thought I was dead and ended up in a psych ward where the shrink lady put me on a 14-day hold and tortured me with the max dose of antipsychotics while talking down to me condescendingly daily like I was a freak. They also stole cards and shit from my wallet and didn't give them back to me until I paid the hospital bill.
Some of the most disgusting, abusive people exist in those hospitals. I made the mistake of speaking up to one lady who was talking to a guard like he was a piece of shit. Turns out she was the lady in charge of my case. She spun up a bunch of lies to the doctor about things she claimed I said, along with other nonsense to keep me in shitty local community center. And when it was time for me to go, she tried getting me sent to some inner-city total shithole of a hospital. Thankfully, I was lucid enough to advocate for myself coherently at that point, and got routed to the hospital where they send rich people.
Yeah, the exact same thing happened to me as well. Tried to put me in a treatment center afterwards, but I fought it off. After they gave me the 14-day hold form, she told the judge all of this bullshit. But he obviously believed her over me due to her credentials and me being the one in a psych ward. But honestly, she was such an awful person, and I hope karma deals with her one day.
The only time I've been obsessed with death and wanting to off myself is when I've been on pharmaceuticals. After my second hospitalization, I really tried to take their pills, but it was unironically going to kill me, so I decided to stop drinking and smoking weed, taking other drugs, and that's done wonders. Glad you made it through that stuff, Anon. I could have ended up dead or imprisoned long-term the day I got arrested. It's legitimately a miracle I made it out of all that without any lasting charges or other external consequences. It was pretty traumatic to experience at the time of each of those hospitalizations, and for some time afterward, but in retrospect and in comparison to where I've landed as a result, it all feels like the hand of God forcibly removing me from situations that were harmful to me and placing me into better circumstances to fulfill some goals I couldn't have otherwise fulfilled without some sort of divine or universal intervention. I've been able to leverage the pain and destruction of those situations to grow, thankfully. It was definitely a difficult and uncomfortable process, though.
Our reality is a complex simulation created by an extra-dimensional entity for unclear purposes. If the simulation ever ends, the universe and all it contains will disappear. Beyond the universe is nothing. Content is being steadily generated every day. Other civilizations exist but are cordoned off from contacting each other through distance and technological hard limits in order to maintain different environments with distinct flavors. This detail suggests that our simulation universe is run for either experiments or entertainment, or both. It is known that if the entities that run this simulation take a particular interest in an individual or group, they will provide this individual or group with an axis simulation separate from the main one, which is constructed based on the individual's identity. Depending on the axis simulation's purpose, this world may be designed to exploit the individual's fears, fulfill their fantasies, or for other ends. Nobody knows what it takes to be removed and put in an axis simulation. In all likelihood, the procedure is random or beyond our control. Over the ages, humans have received hints and intimations about the nature of our reality, which have led to religious dogma about both heaven, hell, and reincarnation. In pre-modern times, it was more common for the simulation to be jarringly interrupted due to lower communication and recording technology, meaning that there would be no lasting effect on the populace. The result is mythology and legend. Anyway, there is no reason for you to believe this. It was related to me in a dream. It always creeps me out how things always feel like they were placed there just to mess with me. I mean, I know it's extremely arrogant to say that the world revolves around me, but some things are way too targeted to be coincidental. It also made me think about side characters if someone else is indeed the protagonist of the current simulation. Don't these other people mean anything to whomever created the simulation? Are they just there to fill up space and make it more convincing? That fucking sucks.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.